It's 6 a.m. in Wolfsburg, Germany, and Markus is doing what he's done for the past 11 years. Badge in, walk the line, check the torquey wrench, listen for the hum of the assembly line, waking up. He builds transmission parts for one of the biggest automakers in the world. His father did the same kind of job. His grandfather worked in a factory too. In Germany, a job like this isn't just a paycheck, it's an identity. But this morning, taped to the break room door, there's a notice. Production is being cut. 300 positions, gone by the end of the year. Markus isn't panicking, not yet. But for the first time in over a decade, he's wondering if made in Germany still means what it used to. Meanwhile, 4,000 miles away, Dave in Ohio assumes the opposite is true, that German factory jobs are basically bulletproof, that German engineering is untouchable, that Germany is the one economy in the world immune to whatever's happening back home. He's wrong, and so is almost everyone who still pictures Germany as Europe's unstoppable economic engine. Right now, Germany is losing industrial jobs faster than almost any point in its post-war history. And the story of why says a lot about what happens when an entire economy is built on assumptions that quietly stop being true. Hi, I'm Justin, and I've lived in Germany for over 12 years. On this channel, I dig into the real costs and the real numbers behind life here versus life in the States. The stuff nobody puts on a postcard. For decades, the myth about Germany was simple. German industry is the best in the world, German exports are unstoppable, and the German economy is the steady, boring, reliable engine that just keeps growing while everyone else has their crises. The reality right now looks very different. Since 2019, Germany's industrial sector has lost 272,000 jobs. Nearly 5% of every job in the sector gone. The car industry, the crown jewel of German manufacturing, is losing roughly 10,000 jobs a month, and this isn't a one-year blip. In 3 of the last 6 years, the German economy actually shrank, giving it the slowest growth of any G7 country. Slower than the US, slower than the UK, slower than Japan. For a country that spent 70 years being the example other economies tried to copy, that's a genuinely strange sentence to say out loud. Before you write Germany off, it's worth steelmanning the other side, because there's a real case this is overblown. Germany is still the 4th largest economy on Earth. BASF, headquartered here, employs over 100,000 people and pulls in tens of billions of euros a year, and it's only the 10th largest company in the country. Volkswagen by itself accounts for more than 7% of Germany's entire economic output. This is still a country that builds some of the most sophisticated machinery, chemicals, and vehicles on the planet, and none of that expertise evaporated overnight. So the fair version of the argument is, yes, Germany's going through a rough patch, but rough patches aren't collapse, and a country with this much industrial depth doesn't just fall apart in a few years. So let's get into the real numbers, Germany versus the US, because this is where the picture gets specific. Start with what Germans are actually taking home. Real wages here, pay after you adjust for inflation, have barely moved in a decade, and over the past 5 years, they've actually fallen. The average German worker's paycheck buys roughly what it did back in 2021. Compare that to the US, where real wages, while squeezed by the same inflation wave, have on average grown modestly over that same stretch. If you're picturing German workers pulling ahead of their American counterparts right now, the math says the opposite. Then there's energy. And this is the part that surprises most Americans. For decades, German industry ran on cheap, reliable, natural gas piped in directly from Russia. It was actually cheaper to move gas through a pipeline than to ship it in by boat, the way the US typically handles its own energy. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Germany cut that supply off almost entirely. Industrial energy prices here have roughly doubled compared to pre-war levels, while in the US, sitting on its own gas and oil, energy costs for manufacturers have stayed comparatively stable. That gap alone has made it meaningfully more expensive to build a car, a chemical, or a piece of machinery in Germany than it is in America. Next, China, which used to be one of Germany's best customers and is now one of its toughest competitors. Germany lost close to $10 billion in trade with China in just the 2 years after trade peaked in 2022. In cars specifically, the shift has been brutal. China's share of global car production jumped from around 3.5% to 34% in roughly the same window that Germany's share dropped from 10% down to 4%. Imagine spending decades as the world's default car exporter, only to watch a single country eat a third of the entire global market in under 10 years. And closer to home for American viewers, the US is actually Germany's single largest export market, bigger than China. So when tariffs hit German metals and vehicles in recent years, that landed directly on an economy already struggling to find its footing. It's a strange dynamic. The same American consumers buying German cars are, through trade policy, also part of the pressure squeezing German manufacturers. Put all of that together, and you get a number that should catch your attention if you live here. Consumer prices in Germany have risen faster over the past few years than at any point since records began in 1956. Nearly 70 years of data, and this stretch tops all of it. If you're an American comparing your grocery bill to a friend's in Germany right now, you're both wincing, just for slightly different reasons underneath. Here's where it gets interesting though, and it's the part almost nobody outside Germany understands. When an American company like the one Dave works for announces layoffs, that often means a sudden hard landing. Severance if you're lucky, then you're on your own hunting for the next job while your health insurance ticks toward an expiration date. In Germany, it doesn't usually work that way. There's a short-time work program where, instead of laying someone off outright, a company can cut their hours, and the government covers a large chunk of the lost wages, keeping people employed, trained, and insured through a downturn instead of unemployed. There's also a strict dismissal protection law that makes it genuinely difficult and expensive for a company to fire someone outright once they've been employed more than 6 months. So the same headline number, 272,000 industrial jobs lost, hits real people very differently depending on which side of the Atlantic they're standing on. Speaking of staying financially squared away when the ground underneath you gets shaky, if you're an American living here, this is exactly the kind of year you don't want to get your US tax filing wrong, especially with incomes, currencies, and job situations shifting under people. I actually use my expat taxes to handle my US filing from Germany, since it's built specifically for Americans abroad instead of a generic filer that doesn't know what to do with foreign income and foreign accounts. I'll drop a link below. So back to Markus on the factory floor in Wolfsburg. His job probably isn't safe forever, the pressures are real, and a supplier losing volume can't absorb 300 positions indefinitely. But he's not walking out into the void the way Dave might picture. If the cuts come, there's a real chance Markus first sees his hours reduced under short-time work, with the government topping up his pay. Months of transition instead of one gut punch Friday. That's not Germany being immune to the crisis. The crisis is very real. It's Germany distributing the pain differently than the US does, for better and for worse. So what do you actually do with all this? Whether you're living here, thinking about moving here, or just trying to understand where this economy is headed. First, if you're already in Germany working in an exposed industry, automotive, machinery, chemicals, know your rights under short-time work and dismissal protection before you need them, not after. Second, if you're an American investor or business owner watching Germany from afar, understand that German engineering isn't automatically a synonym for safe bet the way it was 15 years ago. Do the homework on the actual sector, not the old reputation. Third, watch German energy policy specifically, because whether they rebuild cheap, reliable power is probably the single biggest variable in whether this becomes a lost decade or a comeback story, the way the 1990s eventually became one. And fourth, if you're an American living here, get your tax filing handled by someone who actually understands expat rules, because that's one place where a shaky economy and a messy filing can turn into real money lost. Germany's been called the sick man of Europe before, back in the 1990s, and within a decade it rebuilt itself into one of the strongest export economies on the planet. Whether it pulls off that same trick twice is genuinely an open question. But if you're trying to understand Germany, don't just look at the postcard version, the beer gardens, and the punctual trains. Look at the real numbers, the ones behind Markus's factory floor and your own grocery bill, because that's the whole point of this channel. The costs nobody puts on a postcard. If this helped you see Germany a little differently, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.